to you by KCB. KCB, making the difference.
The business community has perennially complained about the poor state of infrastructure in the country that has resulted in high costs of doing business. The state of roads was wanting and the country's railway network outdated, besides other inefficiencies that add on to the cost of doing business. In tonight's program, we look at Treasury's response to the infrastructure need and, in particular, investment in rail infrastructure, what it means for the business community and if indeed it is boon or bane. Also in the program, we feature a different kind of delicacy and have your question answered. Remember, you can send in your questions on any financial matter to the email address ktnbizweekly@standardmedia.co.ke or SMS number 8040, and we will have an expert answer your right here on the show. Well, good evening and welcome to this edition of KTN Business Weekly. I'm Michael Oyer. In his budget last week, Finance Minister Uhuru Kenyatta allocated 54.8 billion shillings for the construction and improvement of our railway system and other infrastructure projects besides the 100 billion shillings that was allocated for roads. 1.8 billion shillings was allocated for a commuter train between the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and the railway station in the city centre that should be complete within the next 3 years and reduce the time it takes to the airport to a mere 12 minutes. Our feature looks at these initiatives and if indeed there are any loopholes in the proposed projects that could lead us as a country to a situation where we go round in circles instead of solving the congestion problem.
The sun rises on the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. But as beautiful as this may be to many viewers, few residents have the pleasure of enjoying it. To them, it is the gun that sets off their unending rat race to make a living, but mostly to get to their work destinations on time. Many will tell you that traffic in the city is a nightmare that can drain the last ounce of energy to the most energetic if caught in it in the morning. The Kenya Institute of Public Policy and Research Analysis last estimated losses owing to traffic to be in the tune of 60 billion shillings annually on the lower side, and this in the city alone.
2005, and we updated, that was in 2008. We were losing anything close to between 2 and 4% of GDP from transport losses, and that is mainly fuel loss, wear and tear on vehicles, and so on and so on. So it's quite significant, and we've not added on top of that consequences arising from poor road safety and environment air pollution. So when you add those, the numbers quite go up. It's quite significant, and that was only from Nairobi.
The figure has gone up, making any progress towards decongesting the city a very welcome move. And so when the finance minister allocated 1.8 billion shillings for the construction of a commuter rail service between the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and railway station in the city centre, a section of Nairobi residents breathed a sigh of relief, especially frequent travellers who have to factor in many hours before their scheduled departure time from the airport to beat the infamous Mombasa road traffic. Rail transport has many advantages, and those who use it know it too well.
The matatus are very expensive. Like right now, from Kasarani to town, they are charging 80 shillings. You won't find a matatu that is charging less than 80 shillings. And the train is charging 35 shillings, so it's much cheaper.
Basically, I'm saving between 2,700 to 3,000 on a monthly basis.
Train is more efficient because when you compare it with the road transport in terms of jam, there are a lot of jams within the Thika road, so I prefer using the train because it's more efficient. Yeah, because there's no jams when you're using the train.
I think they should increase the trains, as in the trains that normally operate in the morning are only 3, and I think they should increase the trains.
On its commuter service around the city, Rift Valley Railways ferries upwards of 20,000 people a day and is targeting to raise this number to 35,000 people a day since introducing additional services in some of its routes. According to this concessionaire, investment in railway service could not have come at a better time.
We want to show that public transport is a real alternative for everybody here in Nairobi to choose and to take, and not to spend most of the time in the jam.
But amidst the excitement presented by the probability of a safe, fast, affordable and convenient mode of transport, are loopholes that the government-funded research body, the Kenya Institute of Public Policy and Research Analysis, KIPRA, notes must be considered if the solution to deliver on the intended objective of decongesting the city and sorting out public transport mess are to be achieved.
The commuter rail network just serves a certain corridor. It will be fixed on a certain corridor, and it's going to be fixed over the long term. So you're actually setting a permanent spatial structure for the city. Is that the most useful structure for the city? Is it the most economical? Or are we reinforcing existing inefficiencies in the spatial structure of the city? Those are the questions that I'm not sure we've adequately answered.
We expect the core, what we call the core phase of the project, to be done by the end of 2013. And that is looking at Embakasi, Roiro, Dagoretti, as well as JKIA, of course.
Indeed, a well-developed and modernized railway system will result in significant savings to the economy, both in terms of costs and time. The challenge is to ensure the approach taken is wholesome to avoid a vicious cycle that does not quite address the problem.
If our main concern is reducing the cost of transport, what a family or what households use for transport, we need to begin to start thinking of an integrated ticketing framework. Are we doing that when we have multiple players?
The new budget framework presents an opportunity for departure from the previous methods held captive by political unrest, corruption networks and dominance by the executive. Under the new constitutional framework, parliamentary input is by way of debate, interrogation of estimates and public participation in the allocation of resources. In essence, it involves all stakeholders in planning for and developing the country.
We are hoping eventually to start the overpass from the airport towards Westlands. The southern bypass, which will be a dual carriageway bypass, should start sometime in October. So I know there's a lot of pent-up frustration as we speak right now, because today we have a terrible congestion.
For us, the focus is to build an integrated public transport network, which will then integrate all the modes in one coherent whole. Yes, the different sectors are operating differently, but that precisely is the challenge. We need to begin to bring all these modes together, the rail and the road and the non-motorized pedestrian form of transport.
According to KIPRA, returns on investment in the rail sector are not guaranteed as much as it is an essential service and convenient mode of transport for commuter services, and this must be mitigated ahead of time.
Commuter rail networks world over don't make money. They have to be subsidized. And under the new constitution, public transport is a county government function. What systems are we putting in place to ensure that we are not saddling county governments?
RVR has improved its commuter rail services in the last months. From March the 1st on, we have increased our daily service from 8 to 15 trains per day. This is following the fact that we see an increment by the market demand. The numbers of passengers has also increased.
All said and done, the investment in infrastructure and progress towards decongesting the city is laudable. However, care must be taken to ensure that the problem is addressed wholesomely and not piecemeal.
Vision 2030 is a 22-year project. There seems to be an expectation that all these projects are supposed to start. No, the sequential implementation of the various flagship projects.
The idea of Vision 2030 is to provide that long-term perspective. It has identified the flagship projects for intervening, and I know the Nairobi Mass Rapid Transit project is one of those interventions. What we need to be focusing on is implementation. Tracking implementation, there are some instances where your plans may not come on stream as fast as you expected, but that is part of the development challenge. So the idea is to maintain the costs, and continually review our plans and do cost correction where it's appropriate.
It is upon every Kenyan to contribute towards the achievement of the Vision 2030 that at its most basic level promises a better life for every Kenyan. This requires more vigilance from the public and better participation in terms of shaping how that better life is achieved.
KTN Business Weekly returns with our entrepreneurial feature, where Zawadi Modibo visits a restaurant dealing in seafood. We learn how to thrive in such a business and how to carve a niche for oneself. That and your question answered on the other side of KTN Business Weekly.
Every time the word tourism is mentioned, what comes into your mind? Probably the beautiful sceneries we have, the wildlife, and sometimes the coastal town of Mombasa. However, there is more to it, and this is why we bring to you an entrepreneur whose specialty is put on the table different kinds of seafood. Talk of the crab, the lobster, and even prawns.
It all happens here at the La Marina restaurant within the small coastal town of Mtwapa, a town renowned for fishing among other sea line activities. The various kinds of seafood delicacies served here include lobsters, jumbo prawns, crabs, among others. According to Alice Gasheru, the entrepreneur running the facility, the menu was typically designed by the restaurant to provide variety and cope with stiff competition in the hotel industry.
The menu that is here is what has been invented by La Marina, and we specialize mostly in seafood. Many people have the taste of the seafood here, because seafood depends on how you prepare it.
The menu is special with lots of seafood. These lobsters are fresh from the sea, though looking scary at first. These gentlemen have learned the art of handling them. The prawns too are cut before being washed.
Now this is how you prepare the jumbo prawns, just as I have learned. You add a bit of oil, some lemon juice, black pepper, and a bit of soya sauce, and of course with some salt here, and you mix them. This process is called marination, and it gives the prawns, gives it taste. Yes, and you'll soon be joining me on the table.
However, for these crabs, they have to be cooked alive. They are not killed after fishing, since on drying, they emit poisonous fluids, and so they are immersed in boiling water to cook while still kicking. Different ingredients prepared and mixed before shallow frying the soon-to-be a mouth-watering delicacy.
We have contracted people who fish on our behalf, and there are times when, depending on the season, there are times when it's a bit difficult to get some of these seafood items, namely the lobster and prawns. During such times, the people we have contracted to get our seafood, Now they have to go far and make sure that we get it, because we never want to sell something which is not there. If there is an item which is on the menu, we make sure that we have it. So suppliers go as far as Lamu, go as far as Tanzania to make sure that we get seafood during those times.
One challenge though is the fact that the seafood are seasonal, especially the lobsters and prawns, and hence the fishermen contracted by the restaurant to supply the food go an extra mile to ensure they deliver. Some go as far as Lamu and neighboring Tanzania to get them. This is however at an extra cost to the restaurant.
La Marina is situated right next to the sea. So when you see the sea, you try to imagine what comes from the Indian Ocean. And these are some of the things that we get from the sea. And whatever we get is fresh. We always have fresh food from the sea.
Most of the clientele here are tourists, both local and domestic. This is mainly realized through aggressive marketing, including distribution of brochures through tour guide and tour companies to tourism source markets.
In the market report, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics reported that the economy grew at 5.6% last year, and inflation for the month of May stands at 12.95%. From 12.05% a month earlier. The 91-day Treasury bill is attracting interest at a higher 9.02%, while the 182-day and 364-day papers are attracting interest at 9.95% and 10.25% respectively. The average bank lending rate remained unchanged at 13.92% at the end of April this year from March, while the average bank deposit rate was pegged at 3.47%, meaning that banks were enjoying an interest rate spread of 10.45%. Looking at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, there are only 3 stocks currently trading with dividends. Kenya Airways carries a 1 shilling and 50 cents dividend per share, and books close on October the 14th, with payment to be effected on the 16th of November. Standard Group carries a dividend of 50 cents a share and 20 cents a share for Safaricom. The last 2 companies are yet to announce the books closure and payment dates. And in other announcements, Centum has issued a bonus of 1 share for every 10 held, and books close on the 22nd of June. This is, however, subject to shareholder approval. In your question answered this week, we picked this question from Maina Chege, who says, I would like to know how I can double 20,000 shillings in 1 year between a fixed deposit account, unit trusts, and shares. He's not interested in starting a business, is a student, and would like to use the money for fees. We pose the question to Rina Karina from Faida Investment Bank. Rina.
Thank you, Michael. I'm glad to hear that, Edward, you want to increase the money that you have. So given the options that are available, we'll kind of just go through them, and then you'll see that it may not be possible for you to double your money, but you will be able to make some sort of a return. The first option that you asked for was a fixed deposit account. If you go around town today, most fixed deposit accounts will probably range between 2 and 3% for that amount of money that you want to invest in. And so 2 to 3% of 20,000 in 1 year will probably give you 400 shillings or so, without even deducting withholding tax, which is 15%. And so after that 1 year, you will have made about 20,400 shillings. If you invest in unit trusts, the thing about unit trusts is there are different kinds of unit trusts. There are unit trusts that are purely money market funds, and what that means is they invest in bonds and treasury bills. They invest in fixed deposit accounts as well. And then you have an equity fund, which basically invests purely in the stock market. And then you have a balanced fund, which is a mixture of them, as well as invests also in foreign exchange. The best option for you would either be a fixed deposit account or treasury bills and bonds. Now, the thing about treasury bills and bonds is the minimum requirement. You require 50,000 shillings for treasury bond and 100,000 shillings for treasury bill. And so really your only option, as I see it, is a fixed deposit account for the moment, or unit trusts that invest in a money market fund. I hope I've answered your question, and all the best.
Well, thank you very much, Rina. Remember, you can send your question on a matter that we have covered or any other financial related matter, and we will get an expert to respond to you right here on the show. Send the question to 8040 by text message or via email to ktnbizweekly@standardmedia.co.ke. Well, from the entire KTN Business Weekly team, thank you for watching this edition of KTN Business Weekly, and let's do it again next week on another edition of KTN Business Weekly. I'm Michael Oyer. See you shortly on KTN Prime.
Business Weekly, brought to you by KCB. KCB, making the difference.